And we'll be reading the first section today and tomorrow, and on Monday we'll go on to section 2 in chapter 29. As a way of getting up to speed, I thought that we would go back one paragraph from the previous section. And you don't have to turn there, but you're welcome to if that's convenient for you. And so this kind of leaves us with where did we leave off in chapter 28? It's with this paragraph. And David, if you could do the honors, I appreciate that.
Your home is built upon your brother's health, upon his happiness, his sinlessness, and everything his father promised him. No secret promise you have made instead has shaken the foundation of his home. The winds will blow upon it and the rain will beat against it, but with no effect. The world will wash away, and yet this house will stand forever, for its strength lies not within itself alone. It is an ark of safety, resting on God's promise that his son is safe forever in himself. What gap can interpose itself between the safety of this shelter and its source? From here, the body can be seen as what it is, and neither less nor more in worth than the extent to which it can be used to liberate God's Son unto his home. And with this holy purpose is it made a home of holiness a little while, because it shares your Father's will with you.
So it's interesting, after we have Hurricane Ian blow through at 155 miles an hour with 8-foot storm surges, the idea of the winds will blow upon it and the rain will beat against it, but with no effect on what? We're talking about a metaphor called your home. Where now we don't mean your house or the property we own that you might reside in. We mean your internal home. Where is your being located and where is it safe? So we have this internal world, reality of ours. And of course, there's an external world as well. The external world is very vulnerable to the rains and the winds, but the internal world is invulnerable to those things. And so we have the existential choice. Where do you locate yourself? In that internal world or the external world? And that proves to be the ultimate question, because everything ripples outward from that choice. If you locate yourself in the internal world, it shifts the way you perceive yourself, your life, your relationships, and all other things. So where is your home? Where do you find your safety and your shelter? And is it different from the external world to the internal world? That is the big existential question. So before we, Susie, you had a comment?
I just wanted to say one quick thing, which is why that was my intention today, because like so many things happen. I won't go into it, but when I know the peace of God, honestly, my internal anything can happen externally. And I'm not saying it won't affect me. I mean, that would be insane. I live in this world, but my whole relationship to it is completely different when I'm in peace and when I am connected to a higher source. It just is. It just is. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. And I know exactly what you're saying. My home is not out there. It's just not.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Susie. So she said her relationship is different to those things, and the way we react, the way we think about those things in the external world, as well as our emotional state in response to changes in the external world, all hinge upon where we find the foundation of our home and how we view that. So that's where we left off in chapter 28. Before we go on to chapter 29 in today's reading, please join me in a moment of silence as we settle into our interior home and the foundation of our shelter and our safety, and the recognition that we are safe in this interior life of ours. Thank you, sweet spirit, that the door is always open to our interior world. Thank you, and amen. And thank you, Brother David, for helping us with the reading.
There is no time, no place, no state where God is absent. There is nothing to be feared. There is no way in which a gap could be conceived of in the wholeness that is his. The compromise, the least and the littlest gap would represent in his eternal love is quite impossible. For it would mean his love could harbor just a hint of hate. His gentleness turns sometimes to attack, and his eternal patience sometimes fail. All this do you believe when you perceive a gap between your brother and yourself? How could you trust him then? For he must be deceptive in his love. Be wary then. Let him not come too close and leave a gap between you and his love through which you can escape if there be need for you to flee.
So within A Course in Miracles, this metaphor of an interior realm of safety and an external world of chaos, those perspectives will combine into a single paragraph for the purposes of helping you to learn to recognize which point of view is being shared. Why is this done within a single paragraph, sometimes even within a single sentence? So that as these thoughts cross your mind in your own day, you will learn to discern from what source do they come, from your interior worldview or from the exterior worldview. So see if you can detect there's no time, no place, no state where God is absent. Well, that's actually true of both our interior world as well as the exterior world, but you are more likely to discern it in your interior world. But then, and in that place, there's no gap that can be conceived in the wholeness of this interior world where there is no state where God is absent. In contrast to that view, there's this alternative idea of a compromise with a little gap in God's love. This is the ego's point of view. The idea that sometimes God's love and his gentleness can be turned around into attack, and the presence seems to fail. This is the view the ego would have you shaking at. The idea, it actually leads to deep fear. And you believe, and your ego or human ordinary mind will believe this whenever you perceive a gap between your brother and yourself. If you perceive it in any of your relationships, then you will believe it's also true in your relationship with the Creator. And so there's a linkage there. And A Course in Miracles says, if we are to heal, we must go to the very source or the very cause of this sick thinking and correct our mind at the cause of the sickness. And then all the forms in which it shows up will be corrected because the cause has been corrected. So there's an idea here that is abstract, but if you can grasp this abstraction, I think you'll find it very useful. It's the idea of the wholeness of God and the wholeness of reality and the wholeness of love. This is the opposite of the idea where there's gaps and interruptions and obstacles and chaos. It's an idea of wholeness. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that the Course teaches you cannot symbolize a wholeness that encompasses everything, that encompasses perfection and infinity and totality. The Course says you can't reduce that to a symbol. However, for some of us, we are visual in nature. And I found that this specific visual helps me to conceive of all things being interconnected with one another in a very orderly fashion, which repeats throughout infinity and which has no inequalities and no interruptions. So this is just my interpretation of what it means that there could be no way in which a gap could be conceived in the wholeness of reality, the wholeness of creation, and in the wholeness of the Creator. It's the exact opposite of what the ego teaches about chaos and obstacles and guilt and fear. This wholeness concept exists already in your higher mind. And so what we're doing right now is just trying to make room in your conscious mind to accept this idea of completeness, of totality, and of wholeness. Heather?
I love this image because it helps me, I overlay this on what my mind looks like. And if it looks like my mind, it's very clear when there's some disturbance because those lines will become blurred. And so it's a very nice visual for me of keeping my mind and my soul quiet so that there's no interference, because I can see how that would affect everything. I love that image. Thank you.
So in A Course in Miracles, how many minds are there throughout time and space? there's one mind. But we recognize that from the ego perspective, it wants to believe in there are many separate minds. So for me, this is like, you might be one of these little circles. It's not that you're, it's not that you're separate. It's that your mind is integrated with all other minds into the one mind. But we start out thinking that we have our own private mind. And this is what needs to be corrected. And this is what sometimes images such as this are helpful with. All right, we'll move on. David?
Here is the fear of God most plainly seen. For love is treacherous to those who fear, since fear and hate can never be apart. No one who hates but is afraid of love, and therefore must he be afraid of God. Certain it is he knows not what love means. He fears to love and loves to hate, and so he thinks that love is fearful. Hate is love. This is the consequence the little gap must bring to those who cherish it and think that it is their salvation and their hope.
So it's one of the repeating questions in A Course in Miracles. What is the meaning of love? What does love mean? And really what that question is about is not so much what does it mean to you, but what is its meaning independent of personal opinions and individual notions? What is the meaning of love? And it's a bit of a conundrum because you can't understand the Course says, you can't understand the meaning of love while conflicting ideas occupy your consciousness. Love can't be the meaning of total love, unconditional, universal, pure love cannot be understood in the midst of war and conflict. So therefore, we must remove all the barriers. This is what the Course does, helps to remove all the barriers to love's awareness, and then the meaning of love comes shining through on its own. It's not an intellectual process. It's a process of removing the lies in which we believed about ourselves and others. And once the lies are all gone, the obvious truth of what love is becomes apparent.
Wait, so what's the answer?
It cannot be known, the true meaning of love cannot be known by a mind that still believes in illusions. So what is the true answer? The meaning of love is union, perfect. David, I see it in this picture, perfect union with no breaks, no gaps, no inequalities, perfect purity. Susie?
Well, it reminds me of the introduction where it says, this course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. And I remember when I first took this under nothing unreal exists, I wrote all my imaginary beliefs. No, so when I get rid of all of that, like you're saying, I just know the peace of God, which is just love.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, those are words, but it's just a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, it can't really be summarized with words.
Yes. Oh, David, thank you, Susie. There's one more thing, David, that said another place. There's a sequence. You can't experience peace without forgiveness. And you can't, you can't fully embody peace until you've embodied forgiveness. And you can't embody perfect love until you've embodied peace. Said another way, as long as the mind is still at war with itself, you can't experience pure love. The meaning of it is split and torn and conflicted. So that leads us to, and Kara and Fatima, I know that you may be new here, so this is very deep what we're about to talk about here. It mentions here the fear of God is most plainly seen, for love is treacherous to those who fear. So what is that all about? Well, there's this concept. This is what sickness would be. This is what we're trying to heal from. This is not what we're recommending. This is what we're asserting is a state of the human experience that results in the chaos you see out in the world. And it's a deep psychological phenomena called self-attack. What is it? It is to use your will in a way which opposes your holy self. It's to have an internal split between your holy self and the way you use your will, which splits your mind into opposing camps and creates a false self. Call it a little self, a false self belief system that is now opposed to divine reality, and your little self views divine reality as a threat because it's the opposition. So now we have what's called a holy warfare within between a false idea of who you are and your true holy self. It says in another place, Father, I thought I wandered from your will and defiled it, and broke its laws and interposed an alien will, believed the alien will was more powerful and capable than the creator's will, and therefore could attack it and overcome it. So this is a type of attack against your holy self and creation. And where does this all occur? Within a split mind, within a mind that seems to be in two different camps with two different purposes. And this is the basis of all sickness. It's perceiving this little self as apart from God's creation, and therefore perceiving itself as weak and vulnerable and flawed and needy and inadequate, and therefore needing to defend this little self, put up armature defense systems to protect it from the truth. And so this concept of the little self can be attacked and be attacked. It can attack other concepts and feel attacked itself. It's very unstable. And here's how it works. This little self within your own conscious mind makes up images about life and about yourself and others, perceives those images as unworthy, it's critical about them, and then attacks them for their unworthiness. You might recognize this as part of a death wish. It's a desire to not be who you are and to go on an attack rampage. So the Course says this is an alien will within us, one for which we have given faith and the power of our minds to. And how long will we continue to allow that alien will to prevail? This entire course is based on withdrawing your faith and the power of your mind from that alien will, and instead changing directions, turning towards the Holy Spirit and aligning with the Holy Spirit's direction so that you can reclaim your true self. Okay, so that's self-attack. And we talk about the fear of God. That's where it comes from, is this fear that is based on what it occurs within the self. Correct that, and then the cause of fear is gone. Now, that's the summary of the theory. The practice of that requires work, no doubt, but that's the motivation for this program. That's the direction that we're going, is to reunite with our higher self to end the internal split by withdrawing all energy, faith, and power from the alien little self to which we believed was our identity. David?
The fear of God, the greatest obstacle that peace must flow across, has not yet gone. The rest are past, but this one still remains to block your path and make the way to light seem dark and fearful, perilous and bleak. You had decided that your brother is your enemy, sometimes a friend, perhaps, provided that your separate interests made your friendship possible a little while, but not without a gap perceived between you and him, lest he turn again into an enemy. Let him come close to you, and you jumped back. As you approached, did he but instantly withdraw. A cautious friendship, and limited in scope and carefully restricted in amount, became the treaty that you had made with him. Thus you and your brother but shared a qualified entente in which a clause of separation was a point you both agreed to keep intact. And violating this was thought to be a breach of treaty not to be allowed.
Thus, you and your brother shared a qualified entente, a qualified treaty, a temporary peace treaty in the midst of conflict. So, what are we saying? The fear of God, which we just talked about a moment ago, will then have ripple effects into your relationships and the way you view others, resulting in you viewing your brother, others, as the opposition, as the antagonist, even as the enemy. I know that many people here in this group have testified that this actually showed up with family members, and that these were long, protracted struggles. So what we're saying is that they are symptoms of a common cause. And in order to heal, we must recognize their cause and deal with it. And then the symptoms will fall away because they have no cause. Once you've removed the false cause, then the false symptoms will fade away. In the meantime, a cautious friendship, if one is at war within oneself, with self-attack, the best we can hope for is a cautious friendship, a treaty, a qualified entente. Yes. So this is what we want to heal from so that we remove all those notions, specifically the one we're calling here the fear of God. For those of you read chapter 19, you might remember there are 4 obstacles to peace. And the final obstacle, the last one to fall, the biggest one of them all, is the idea that the Creator himself should be feared. If you can't get much bigger than that, and remove, then that's therefore the last fear to be freed from. And once we have resolved that, we are ready we are released from all fear. Susie?
I just know for me that my ego just didn't want to have anything to do with any of this and wanted me to, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And, how could I possibly be relieved of the fears that I believed were completely true because that's what I knew. Holy Spirit couldn't help me get over those fears or help me with the blocks to love, and the fear of God is really just, God can't help me. I have to stay the way I am. And it's just not true. But it's doing the workbook lessons over and over and over and over again, even when I didn't believe them. And putting my faith in what I could not see. And little by little by little, my mind started to heal and my thinking started to change. And then my experiences were really very different. And I have to say, it's really quite comical when I look around the room and say, I can't, who's saying this? Because Susie isn't really Susie. That my primary relationship truly is with God, because that's where I find my safety and my peace. And if I don't have that, then I'm in collision with everything and everybody in the outside world and my internal self. So it's profound, but it's taken time in this world to get there.
Yeah. Susie said that she did the workbook lessons over and over again, even though she didn't believe them, fully believe them, and she put her faith in it, even though she couldn't see. So it takes a leap of faith. It's pretty certain, it's absolutely certain that you can't make progress in this course without giving your faith to the idea that you can heal. Heather?
Yeah, I just really want to compliment Susie because over and over she says this, and Susie, you're one of the few people I know who's been so dedicated to really doing these lessons over and over and using them in your daily life. And that's why you've made so much progress and you're an inspiration, because you keep telling us this is where the source is. This is where your tools are. This is what makes the difference. And so I just want to thank you for you keep resounding that sound and remind me that I have to keep going back to the lessons over and over, because that is where my safety lies. That's my training. So thank you for that. You keep referring to that, because it reminds me of where I need to go.
Well, without you, Heather, I wouldn't be here. So back at you.
All right. Thank you all. That was so helpful. Let's move forward. David?
The gap between you and your brother is not one of space between 2 separate bodies. And this but seems to be dividing off your separate minds. It is the symbol of a promise made to meet when you prefer and separate until you and he elect to meet again. And then your bodies seem to get in touch and thereby signify a meeting place to join. But always is it possible for you and him to go your separate ways. Conditional upon the right to separate, will you and he agree to meet from time to time and keep apart in intervals of separation, which do protect you from the sacrifice of love. The body saves you, for it gets away from total sacrifice and gives you the time in which to build again your separate self, which you truly believe diminishes as you and your brother meet.
Okay, so this paragraph is written from the perspective of the ego's view of relationships. We read about it just before: a cautious friendship, limited in scope, carefully restricted in amount, a qualified entente. It's symbolized in the last chapter in this one as a gap between you. It's a gap in relating between you and others. And it says here it's not one of space between bodies, but it is symbolized as space between bodies. For in other words, what we're saying, the illusion makes it appear if you go separately in your private room where your body is separate, then you have your privacy and you are apart from everybody else. That's the way it appears in the illusion. In the interior world, where truth prevails, there's only one mind, and we're all interconnected with one another. And so you're going into your separate room or your separate place in no way disconnects you from everybody else. But the ego wants to believe and assert that as long as your body is separate, then you have a private world and your own private thoughts where you alone are in control. It even goes so far as to say that the body will save you, for it is able to escape from the relationships with others and escaping to build again your ego self, to build again your separate self, which diminishes when you get together with someone, when you connect and join and share a common interest and a common purpose with them. Your ego self is threatened by joining with other people. It feels, it wants you to believe that it's now better off being separate so that it can rebuild your false identity, your false self system. So this is commonly believed by most people. And what we're suggesting here is it shows up in our exterior world, but if you're willing to recognize the reality of wholeness in your interior world, then you will be able to shift your perceptions to that interior world and see all relationships as interconnected, as one in which there is no gap between you and your brother, where the space. So, David, this is the illusion of time and space. On the interior world, time and space are not the basis for separating. They have no function in our interior world because wholeness prevails there, interconnectedness prevails. Go on.
The body could not separate your mind from your brother's unless you wanted it to. Unless you wanted it to be a cause of separation and of distance seen between you and him. Thus do you endow it with a power that lies not within itself, and herein lies its power over you. For now you think that it determines when your brother and you meet, and limits your ability to make communion with your brother's mind. And now it tells you where to go and how to go there, what is feasible for you to undertake, and what you cannot do. It dictates what its health can tolerate and what will tire it and make it sick. And its inherent weaknesses set up the limitations on what you would do and keep your purpose limited and weak.
Mm-hmm. So the intention of the course is to expose the agenda of the ego, for you to see how it works, for you to understand the consequences, so that you might then choose willingly to withdraw the power that you gave to the ego's belief system. And here is one of its chief mechanisms. It's the idea of using the body as the basis to keep you separate, and having your mind identify not with the spirit within, but the ego would have your mind identify with the body without, and thus endow your body with the power that it does not have. It's not natural for the mind to empower the body with attributes that it does not have. And when the mind does make this error of empowering the body with attributes it does not have, then there's a level confusion, a shift from identity centered in spirit to identity centered in the body. And this gives the body power over your mind. For now, you think the body determines your agenda, your relationships. You think the body dictates what its health can tolerate and what will tire you and make you. For in other words, we've believed in the illusion that the body is in the driver's seat of our life. And why? Because the power of our mind is such that we can make that choice. And we're suggesting it's a mistake, it's an error, because one thing is for certain, your body's not going to make it out of here alive. And so it cannot be the basis for your eternal self, your true self. It is only here for a short time. And it's the greatest of all human errors for the mind to think that it's a body rather than to identify itself with the spirit. So we have a bunch of hands up. Let's take Julie first.
Yeah, I should have put my hand down because you kind of were saying what I was thinking is that, so I just feel like this is the course trying to convince me that my focus on those outside, the focus on the outside environment, the bodies, the world, time and space and everything, it's misplaced. And that what I want to learn to do and what I want to try to get better at doing is having the internal really feel the integration of the mind rather than the separation. Because because I can practice by looking out there and feeling like you're my brother, we're not separate. But if I don't really feel it internally, that's where I have to feel it, because when I feel it internally, that's what goes out from me and that's what I see. So I really feel like these last two sections, Jesus, who's talking here, is trying to bring up all my justifications, bring up all the things that I'm justifying to see the separation, and really break it down for me about how I need to just constantly bring it back to, I have to feel one inside in order for anything to happen on the outside. And that justification of you're different and what you do is different and all of that, I guess it's good to try to overcome some of that, but it's not where the problem lies. And so I have to kind of bring it back, as do we all. So thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Heather?
Yeah, I just think this is such a stunning example of higher power versus lower power. We're in our lower power, and it usurps and tries to take over the function of higher power, and it just lays it out here so clear. I'm just stunned at how it's like that's the two voices, two choices.
I really like that you said it usurps, the lower power usurps its role with the higher power. Yeah. Thank you. Susie?
When I came into this program, I was so completely identified with my body. And, what I came to understand is that I live in this world, right? I might not be of this world, but I live in this world. And there are going to be things that I do with my body. But when I came to understand that they were all false idols and special relationships, when I came to understand that I was putting so much meaning into how my body was performing or things like that, I started to understand that is not at all who I really am and what I really am. It was all these false imaginary beliefs that I spoke about before. So when I started to understand that they were all really false idols, and that's not where my safety lied at all, is when a big shift started happening with me. Like, I'm still going to play golf, and I'm still going to go shopping, and I'm still going to do things in this world. But when I take away, when I understand that it's really valueless to my peace, is when I started really getting that I am not a body, and that's not where my peace and safety lie, where I used to truly think it was. My thinking was so upside down. So now when I start to get involved in something, I can see right away, oh, I'm putting way too much value in that, or it's a false idol, or it's just it's not eternal. It's not going to bring me everlasting peace. So it was very helpful for me, because I was really confused in the beginning about that I wasn't a body. So I just thought I'd share that, because I know there's some new people here. And I know it's a really hard concept.
It is at first. Yeah. Thank you. Cheryl? You're muted. Let me try. There you go.
I got it. My apologies. Yeah, I love what Heather just said. Again, I think I've broken my anonymity here. And I believe there's all just one truth. There's many different programs and Course in Miracles, but I've been sober in AA for 29 years. And I love that this just speaks to exactly, that in my life, especially with the demons I fought, whether again you have addictions or not, everybody's got demons. It's that lower power battling that higher power. And as we read earlier, initially I had a fear of God, because my higher power, my God knew that I was not doing the right things. So you can't, your subconscious knows even when you are in denial.
Yeah.
So, but when I came to accept through, the spiritual work, that I have a loving higher power, that I don't have to fear that higher power any longer, that I don't have to feel sorry for myself for the, circumstances dealt to me as a child, etc. That to me is the freedom, and I walk around with that even when times are scary and whatever. I just know that, my higher power, my loving God hasn't, carried me this far to drop me now.
Yes.
So that's how I feel. Anyway, just thought I'd add my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. So we're talking about endowing the body with power, from which then that body identity will keep your purpose limited and weak. You will define yourself in terms of the limitations and the weakness of the body. This has consequences. David? Or do you have a comment, brother? You're muted.
I do. I think this paragraph, to me, spoke to me as one of the most clear examples of the power of mind over matter. In terms of, and it took matter, all matter, and called it the body.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll continue.
Yeah. Thank you.
The body could not separate.
I moved back while you were commenting. Go ahead.
Oh. The body will accommodate to this if you would have it so. It will allow but limited indulgences in love with intervals of hatred in between. And it will take command of when to love and when to shrink more safely into fear. It will be sick because you do not know what loving means. And so you must misuse each circumstance and everyone you meet and see in them a purpose not your own. It is not love that asks a sacrifice, but fear demands the sacrifice of love, for in love's presence, fear cannot abide. For hate to be maintained, love must be feared, and only sometimes present, sometimes gone. Thus is love seen as treacherous, because it seems to come and go uncertainly and offers no stability to you. You do not see how limited and weak is your allegiance, and how frequently you have demanded that love go away and leave you quietly alone in peace.
So we spoke about earlier about what is the meaning of love, and it will, you won't know the meaning of love while you think that it is treacherous and that it comes and goes with uncertainty and offers no stability. You can't entertain two opposing thoughts about love at the same time. You won't understand. The meaning of love will become obscure to you as a result of a confusion about love. And how does that happen? It's by imparting to the body a sense of what your purpose is and who you are, a body-centered identity. And then it will tease you with limited indulgences in love, along with intervals of fear and hatred in between. And so we call this is referred to in the Course in Miracles as mental sickness. It's confusion about the nature of your being, which was created as a part of a universal plan of love. And this lower power, this alien will, would have usurped that plan and installed instead a very narrow and weak and limited sense of your purpose, of your life purpose. And so in that context, so what the Course says is to heal from all that, we have to undo these fears and these limited beliefs. We have to undo placing our power into the body and the ego identity. When your mind chooses to remove all that as your narrative, and let's say all that, the best thing we could do is for you to forget all of that. And I mean, forget it as in deeply within your subconscious mind. And when that would mean that there is no limitations of fear and weakness and lack of love, all that would be gone, then your true nature will come shining through. That's a summary of the whole Course, is let your true nature, the way you were created for eternity, come shining through by removing all of this false self-identity we talked about earlier in terms of self-attack and internal warfare. By removing the enemy, the truth comes shining through. Susie?
I just love what you just said, that line, what you just said, so it doesn't even come through. And so, you know, the Course tells me every time I have an unloving thought that I am aware of, I stop and I say, Holy Spirit, I don't want to have that thought. Please remove that thought. And I've gotten to where that thought just doesn't come anymore. So I feel what you're saying, like, you know, I mean, lots of them still come, but some of them don't come anymore. So that's just, Holy Spirit, please heal my mind.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, I love this, and I know that it takes practice. And it's just when you said that, it just, brought some sadness to me because, in this world, I mean, I wish everybody practiced this, but obviously they don't. We run into so much ego, which is that lower power. And it just, I waver, I try to stay strong and, but just sometimes it gets me. And, I guess you just have to do more work, but just sometimes it gets me. And also you talked about, love. To me, it sounds like a lot of vulnerability, letting that in, knowing that you're going to be safe, knowing that it's okay to love. You need to use those ego tools like false pride, etc., to keep others at bay, because you're keeping your higher power at bay. But sometimes it's just really hard in this world to be vulnerable, and especially against all the ego, universally out there. So that's just what I have to say.
Sure. Thank you, Cheryl. So for another time, Cheryl, we will bring up the spectrum between invulnerability and vulnerability. And of course, it has a complete reversal of those concepts of what it means to be vulnerable and invulnerable. And we can perhaps deal with it just in a summary form here. The ego has a very unstable view of itself. It's on shaky ground. So we would say its false identity is very vulnerable, meaning you can actually change the way somebody else views themselves with a few words. They will feel so attacked by that, and they will adjust the way they view themselves based upon what someone else said. So the ego is very vulnerable. Your true now, and on the other side of the coin, Cheryl, your true being, the way you were created for eternity, is invulnerable to all these time-space illusions. Your true self will never change, and therefore it, in the Holy Spirit's perspective, is invulnerable. So now I know this is a reversal. So this course is designed to help you return to your true state that will never change and that is not vulnerable to any of the effects of this world. So now I know that's not a convincing narrative there, but that's just kind of a summary of how almost every symbol, okay, let me take that back. Every symbol within A Course in Miracles has an ego interpretation and has an opposite that is a Holy Spirit interpretation. The word God is interpreted by the ego one way and by the Spirit another way. Love, hate, fear, all those words, vulnerability, invulnerability, all of them have two opposing meanings. And so it takes, I wish I had known that early on in my study of the Course, that words don't mean in the Course what I thought they meant, but are all subject to a radical reinterpretation based on a point of view that is really the Holy Spirit's point of view, comes from beyond this world. Susie?
I just have to chuckle. I just reread this paragraph on my own, and I just love the last sentence. It's such an ego ploy. Oh, leave me alone. Leave me alone. I'll be in peace without you. Just leave me alone. You know what I mean? Go. And it's just so funny because it is just fear. But I just love this line: demands that the love go away and leave me in peace. So dramatic, the ego.
Yes. So for all of you, a little application note. How does this show up? How will you recognize this within your own emotional state? In one of two ways. One, it's the feeling that in a loving relationship that you're sacrificing something, that you're losing something, that you're paying a steep price to be in this caring, loving relationship. And then another way in which it can show up in your own emotional state is what Susie just said. The idea, if I could just get out of this loving relationship, I'll be better off. I just wish it would go away and leave me alone. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, hang on afterwards, because I believe that we've all felt that at one point or another. And so those are examples in which this upside down relationship with fear and love are experienced in this world. All right, so David, we're going to go on.
The body, innocent of goals, is your excuse for variable goals you hold and force the body to maintain. You do not fear its weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness. but it's lack of strength or weakness. Would you know that nothing stands between you and your brother? Would you know there is no gap behind which you can hide? There is a shock that comes to those who learn their Savior is their enemy no more. There is a wariness that is aroused by learning that the body is not real. And there are overtones of seeming fear around the happy message, God is love.
And David, I'm going to ask you to help us here because I sense that you decoded it. What does this mean? This second sentence here, you not fear its weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness.
You do not fear its weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness, meaning it has neither.
That's what you fear. Yeah, the fear is that body has neither one of those. Said in other places, the body really is neutral, but the mind imparts attributes to the body that it was never intended to have. Like, body, tell me what to do now. Body, tell me what goals I should have. Body, tell me how I should feel about this person. This is part of the confusion with body identity. And so, would you know that there's no gap behind which you can hide? We just read a moment ago about escaping from love, the ego notion of escaping from love so I can just be in peace and quiet, separate and by myself. Would you know that there's no gap from which you can hide? And so here is an indication. There's a shock that comes to learn that, to those who learn that there is no enemy out there. It's a wariness aroused by learning that the body does not have the attributes that we have given it all our life. There's a mental shift that initially appears to be unstable, but something that's upside down when you write it, it will feel unstable initially. And there's overtones of seeming fear around the happy message that love is everywhere and that love is real. Will?
Yeah, I was just thinking there's no place where the ego comes more into play than with the body.
Yeah. And it says another place to affirm what you're saying, Will, the body becomes a symbol for the ego. It's a representation. The body is not the ego, but we tend to view the body as representing the ego. And that's a mistaken notion. This is part of the healing, is the body is neutral. It's just flesh and blood and mostly water. It says in the Course that we over-evaluate it, meaning we give our power to it and make it into a huge narrative for which it really never earned and doesn't deserve.
Yeah, all this separation that we're talking about and this dissatisfaction and separation and everything, these are all internal choices that we're making that block our happiness, that block us from the sunlight of the spirit, basically.
Yes, indeed. Choices, well, we didn't even know oftentimes we didn't even realize we were engaged in. Yeah, thank you. All right, I think we're winding down here, David.
Yet all that happens when the gap is gone is peace eternal. Nothing more than that and nothing less. Without the fear of God, what could induce you to abandon him? What toys or trinkets in the gap could serve to hold you back an instant from his love? Would you allow the body to say no to heaven's calling? Were you not afraid to find a loss of self in finding God? Yet can your self be lost by being found?
We should spend a moment on these last few ideas here, because the words are not where the meaning is. The meaning lies deeper than the words themselves, but we have to work through the words in order to uncover the meaning. As Will just said, these are choices that we're making, often not conscious, and this program helps to make these choices conscious. Would you allow the body to say no to heaven? Would you give your power away to the body and therefore say no to eternity? Meaning no, meaning not interested right now. Would you give the body your goals that way? And are you afraid to lose the body identity, the self that was located in the body? Are you afraid to lose that self in order to find your God self? And can your truth, can that false self be lost by finding your eternal self, your holy self, your God self? These are meant to be rhetorical questions. The answers should be obvious. To your holy mind, the answers are obvious here. And so I'll leave you with this image. Where is yourself? Where do you find yourself? Where we call it other places your home. Where does your identity, where is it safe? Where do you locate it? How do you define it? Every one of us have located in the past our identity in time and space on this planet and in our bodies. We've done that. We know what that narrative is like, and we are learning what the consequences are. The choice that is now before us is one that's being offered from a perspective that we didn't make up ourselves. It's from a perspective that offers a new sense of self, different from the body identity self. And so these are the choices that we now can freely make of where to place our power, what to believe in, what goals to permit to become our own while we're here. And so that's the beginning of chapter 29. And we will be pursuing many of those themes. They will echo back again and again as we go forward in the chapter. Final comments or questions? Can I ask, Kara, how was that for you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It was interesting. I maybe because I just came off of, for me, celebrating the Jewish holiday and a sermon, and I don't really think this is connected, but I felt it was, so I'm just sharing it, that there was a sermon about victim and victimization. And I felt like when you first opened up this conversation and just throughout, for some reason, I keep going back to this sermon, and I mention it because this one tidbit of a Holocaust survivor never, the worst things had happened and never felt he was a victim, and how one can decide, right?
Yes.
And I feel like it's related to this.
Yeah. Fascinating. you know,
of where your home is and where the safety is and how you
yeah, yeah.
perceive internal versus external storms.
Right, right. You know, that just brings to mind, Kara, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for
Just gonna
Meaning,
say that.
and which was really the first psychology book I ever read. It started me on my journey. And to this day, I still think that read Viktor Frankl first. Not only that book, but all his other books too. He just really talked about how do you find meaning in life. And he found meaning even in a concentration camp. And he actually said the people that survived were the ones that held on to some idea of meaning. And the ones that let go no longer wanted to live and thus didn't have enough to get through the challenges there. So yeah, I think it's all interrelated. And we come back looking at these ideas once again through hopefully a new lens. Thank you, Kara. All right, friends, thank you. And thank you, David, for reading. Thank you all for your sharing. And we'll cover the next section on Monday's class, and I'll look forward to seeing everyone again. Please be safe and be well. Namaste.
Love you all. Bye. everyone.
Namaste. Good to see everybody.
Thank you all.